Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian, Breaking Down Security. Just a little old me this week. I'm waiting, actually, for Miss Berlin to reply back, or Mr. Betcher. But Mr. Betcher is probably watching college football because UT Austin's playing. So it's his team, if you will. He doesn't watch National Football League, which is Gridiron or what have you. So it's just me this week. Miss Berlin's at, I think, at an amusement park with her kids. So as we always say here, family comes first. Podcast is always second. And but we're not slouching this week. We are always giving out premium content. We actually have a podcaster or someone with extensive podcast experience that to help fill in this week, and it's Tracy Maleeff. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. So for those people who are listening for the first time, maybe just after derbycon, because they may have saw your talk or may have heard of you only in song and story and legend. Tell a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Tracy Maleeff. Let's see. Well, I am starting a new job on Monday, which I'm not ready to disclose yet, but I will be dropping a fun tweet on Monday. But I was a SOC analyst for 2 years. Before that, I was a librarian. So that's my big claim to fame, that I made the career transition from library world into information security. And I love giving talks at conferences. And I try my best to talk about things like OSINT and customer service, which I've called empathy as a service. And just dealing with end users using a lot of my experience from library world and all the customer facing positions that I've had. And like I said, I'm big on research and OSINT, and I like help connecting people with information.
Okay. So when you say librarian, I'm thinking of one of two things, either the lady who checks out my books at the library or, people who run around the world trying to find ancient relics and stuff like on TV, like with Noah Wiley and stuff. I'm sure it's neither one of those.
No, and the Noah Wiley one, I know the show's called The Librarians, but that's not what a librarian does. But
I was hoping so.
Yeah, no. I spent most of my library career in law firms. Law firms very oftentimes have in-house libraries and their own collection, and it was very research-based, not only legal research, but subject matter area research, whether it be weather or business or chemicals or anything to contribute to the case. So it's a very research-heavy position, information organization-heavy position, and yes, it's very unique. It's not like a public librarian or school librarian. There's many different kinds of librarians. You'd probably be very, very surprised to learn what sort of positions aren't called librarian, but people have a Master of Library and Information Science degree and do that job.
That's awesome. Okay, yeah, I was unaware when I first heard of you, and we had you on the show. This isn't the first time we've had Tracy on the show. We've had her on last year about this time. We also had her, I think, a couple years before. She was on one of our podcasts with podcasters at Derby, which is great. I think that might have been the first time I actually met you in real life.
Not Derby. I think it was like the when the PVC-Sec did like the Christmas time one.
That's right. Yes. That's what it was. We were doing it online. That's right. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you were a SOC analyst. You're moving to a new job on Monday. You don't want to talk about that. That's fair.
No.
In addition to that, you also have a blog site, and you do something called Nuzzle, which is a newsletter. I'm assuming that's what news?
Well, so Nuzzle works with Twitter. So on the one hand, what it does is it helps you understand who that you follow, what they're reading. So when you see a news item, a news story, it will tell you how many of the people you follow have interacted with that news item. So for example, if you want to know what a lot of Infosec people are reading, that's a good way to track that. But what I like to use it for is the newsletter feature, which is you can have it on automatic. Well, so that it will automatically curate things for you. But because I have been my own curator of news items for 20 years now, I prefer to do it myself. So I specialize in trying to find those Infosec stories that maybe people haven't seen, a little bit under the radar. I will handpick them myself and put those out. I try to get the maximum's 10 stories that you can, or news items that you can add to the newsletter. Mm-hmm. So I try to find 10 items, like I said, ones that people really aren't talking about. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback from people saying, I didn't see that article anywhere but your newsletter and things like that. So that's what I do. I mean, it's a pretty simple function. There's really not much else you can do with it. People can subscribe to it and you just push it out. Like I said, automatic or manual. It's very simplistic. There's really not much personalization.
I love that.
You can do with it. Yeah, but that's what I do for that. And then I also have this blog that I try to keep current with. I need to post some more. It's called Ocinti Goodness. Mm-hmm. And it's just basically I'll take a resource that I find. Sometimes they're ones that I used a lot as a librarian that I don't think people in Infosec know about. And I'll just kind of break it down. It'll be like a virtual tour of what the site has to offer. I don't really get in too deep. It's just kind of like a quick, hey, this is what this site is. This is what you can get from it. This is what some of these searches look like, and how people can use it. Sometimes I'll try to write articles with more instruction. For example, I have a blog post about using wedding and engagement announcements for OSINT. Pointing out all the information that people put into those announcements. And I did hear back from a lot of men, for example, who, don't necessarily pay attention to those things. And they told me how shocked they were, how this was like this whole gold mine of information. And so it's just resources that I knew and used. There was a lot of OSINT done in the law firm library world. It's just that we never called it OSINT. So right. When I moved into information security, I didn't understand OSINT or human or SOCMIN or all those military terms.
Right.
And when I asked someone what it was, they laughed and they said, I know you know what it is. You've been doing it. Right. And that's when I was able to make that connection and be like, oh, okay, we didn't call it by that name, but yeah, I know how to find stuff.
That's awesome. No, it's taken me years, and I came from the world of, if you don't know the answer, don't ask the question back or ask clarification questions back. Go and Google it before you ask the question. People are like, wow, you're so smart, Brian. I can't believe you know all this stuff about that. I'm like, I just Google it. It's nothing fancy. Nothing.
Well, I'm not sure if you're insinuating that librarianship is just Googling.
No, God's no.
I wasn't sure where you're going with
that. No. I mean, research is hard, man. And curating that skill is very important, especially for somebody like a SOC analyst or, librarian, because you kind of, somebody's going to come in, hey, I need to understand the weather patterns in Central Asia in the 1980s. And you're like, oh yeah, right here, boom.
Oh, that's funny. I had a question that I had to do research on that was, now I'll be very vague, but there was a container ship crossing the Atlantic, and I was tasked to find the weather every day of the journey.
Right.
And, when you're in the middle of the ocean, that's pretty difficult, but I was able to at least piece together enough data to give them an idea, because there were products on the ship that were damaged. Oh. And so they were trying to determine at what point in the journey was there a leak, and that these things got damaged, right. So that the insurance companies could fight it out and things like that. Like, did it happen early in the journey and nobody caught it? Was it negligence? Did it happen right as they were pulling in, hours from port, and there really wasn't anything they could do about it? So that, crazy things like that. There's a lot of weather research that goes into, for legal things. They want to know what weather was, like especially accidents,
right?
Wanting to know what the weather was that day and stuff like that. So yeah, I have some crazy requests that I've had to look into in my time.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm a Navy weather guy, weather observer. So yeah, I would have been able to help you out with some of that. I know some websites. So anyway, all right. So we had you on because you gave a talk at derbycon. This was not your first derbycon?
It was my first derbycon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'd have to say, of all of them, this was probably my first or second favorite of the 5 that I went to. Mr. Betcher went to 6, but I went to 5. But
Okay.
yeah, what did you think? Because this was your first Derby. You weren't the only person I met. They said this was their first Derby. So what was your thoughts?
Okay. So first, let me preface this with
Uh-oh.
no. It's nothing bad. It's more reflection of me than the conference. Keep in mind, I wasn't slated to speak until 1 p.m. on Sunday.
Right.
And I, like every other, human, most humans, I always get very anxious and nervous before I speak because I care and I want to do a good job. So I was very preoccupied about my talk, and I had so much time leading up to it. So I probably was not as relaxed as I could have been. So I don't know that I got as much out of it as I probably could have because I was just so kind of in my head for things. So I just wanted to lay that out there that that this was just my own nerves and things like that. But anyway, it definitely felt like the last of something. There was a lot of reminiscing, and I don't blame anyone. I'm just saying, like, just my perceptions was I very much felt like an outsider because there was so much reminiscing going on and people wanting to socialize with the others that they knew, that they have shared past derbycons with. And I'm not upset by that at all. I totally get it. I mean, if anything, I kind of felt like I was crashing a family reunion.
It's okay.
To be honest. Yeah. Like, nobody was mean to me. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not, nobody was mean to me, but I don't know. I feel like I'm very observant, and I got it. I got that people, as compared to other cons I've been to, have been a lot more open to meeting new people. I knew what was going on. I knew that people wanted to sit around and reminisce about past derbycons, and I didn't take offense to that. I mean, I got it. I totally got it. So, more so, I got enjoyment out of watching all that, of watching people reminisce about things I didn't know what they were talking about.
Right.
There was also just so much to do. It was one of the few conferences I've been to, like outside of Las Vegas,
right,
where there was so much going on under one roof. And sometimes I would find myself like sitting down just to kind of take a breather. And I'm like, what am I doing? There's like all this other stuff to go, to go look at. So that was both awesome and overwhelming at the same time. Yep. It was like on the one that, hey, there's so much stuff to do. And then the other hand, it's like, oh my God, there's so much stuff to do. Like so there's a lot of stuff there. I thought it was interesting. I was very shocked that I was accepted because I know it's a very technical centric conference. But I was encouraged to submit to it for 2 reasons. One, obviously, it being the last one, I thought now or never. Right. I might, if I ever wanted to speak at it, now's the time. But the second was in May, I gave a version of my talk at the Health ISAC conference. And I remember that they put this empathy as a service talk in their technical track. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking them, was that a mistake? And they said, no, technical people need to hear your talk.
Agreed.
And then when I got such a high audience rating, I think I got like a 4.8 out of 5 or something like that.
Nice.
That's when I got it inside my head. I was like, oh, like, I see that derbycons, proposals are open.
Right.
This went over well with the technical group. It's the last year. Why not? So
right.
Yeah, that's kind of how they came out. So no, I mean, Louisville's nice. I did go to that, what's it called? Spinelli's.
Yes. Yeah.
I went to Spinelli's. Now keep in mind, remember, I'm born and raised in Philadelphia. So they keep calling this Philly style pizza.
Oh.
So that was also why I was like, I want to see what they're calling Philly style pizza.
Okay.
So nothing derogatory, but I figured out why they call it Philly style pizza. And let me explain, because I did ask some questions when I was there.
Okay.
Because I see the pizza and I'm like, all right, I'm not getting it from the visual. And I asked the guy, and he said it was the owner's grandmother's recipe.
Okay. And
I'm sitting down to eat my slices with that in mind. I'm thinking, all right. And being Italian, I'm assuming he probably called her Nonna. So I'm like, all right, but what's about Nonna's recipe that's Philly? Okay, what I've determined is the sauce that they use at Spinelli's is the same type of sauce we use on something here in Philly called tomato pie, which is not pizza. Tomato pie is not pizza, but the sauce was very distinctive and the same kind. So I'm thinking that this guy's grandmother, if she, since she was from Philly, would make this Philly thing that we call tomato pie, and then he made that into a pizza. So I feel like I cracked that code there, because I was thinking, like, we're not necessarily a town known for our pizza. So I was trying to figure out how this was Philly style pizza.
So it's baked in rectangular sheet pans, typically minimally topped with tomato gravy, or baked into crisp browns that could double as plain old pizza. Okay.
Well, see, we don't call it pizza though. We call it, so an easier way to explain it, it's basically like focaccia with tomato paste on it. And then you take that dry, grated like Parmesan or Romano, and you sprinkle it on top, and you eat it cold. You don't heat it up. You eat it cold.
I don't hate that.
It's good. It's great. Like, it's really good. And the sauce is it's tomato paste consistency.
Right.
It's thicker, and it's like a tinge sweeter.
Okay. I could see
but
that.
No, it's great for like tailgating, because then you don't have to worry about it, going back. Like, you can just have it out. So people will get like giant, and they're usually like they're rectangular. So that's what I'm thinking, is that this Spinelli's grandmother used to make tomato pie, and he decided to make that into pizza. And there we go. So I was satisfied with that little pilgrimage to Spinelli's.
No, that's cool. So we ordered from Spinelli's the last 2 years we were there, because we did the Brakesec pizza party and stuff. And I don't know what pizza you got, but we ordered like chicken and waffles pizza, the barbecue chicken pizza, the hot wings pizza, that kind of stuff.
I just had plain.
Just had the cheese. Okay.
Yeah, I have a theory that you can judge a pizza place or a bakery on how well they do either their like plain cheese pizza or a glazed donut.
See, you and I believe you and I are part of the same, because I'm like, if I go to an Italian joint, I order the lasagna, because if they can't make a decent lasagna, then
they can't make anything else. Yeah, like if you want to go to a bakery, like try the glazed donut. If they can't figure out a good glazed donut, then they can't figure out anything else. And a cheese pizza, if they mess up a regular cheese pizza, then they can't do anything else.
Exactly.
So I like to do my base
sauce, cheese, crust, done, market.
Yeah, exactly. And if you mess that up, then then I'm not interested in anything else you have.
All right, that's cool. So you're from Philly, Geno's or Pat's, or do you have another preference?
They're for tourists.
Yeah, I figured Geno's and Pat's is touristy. The only time I've ever been there, I went to Geno's. I didn't go to Pat's, and then I was told by a local Philly person, you went to the wrong two places, and I was like, oh, well, there you go.
Okay, so this gets complicated.
It's probably like a religion. It's a religion in Philly, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, well, here, let me say this. So, those Pat's and Geno's are for tourists or drunk Philadelphians. The only time I find it acceptable to eat there, if you're from here, is if you're drunk, because there's been many times at like 2:30 in the morning when I've been there, because like it's like that feels like the only acceptable time to do that.
Right.
My favorite cheesesteak place is one in the suburbs that it's just the one that I grew up going to.
Okay.
And it's like your favorite cheesesteak hoagie place is usually going to be like much like a church parish, what the one you grew up going to.
Yeah.
I don't believe in Cheese Whiz. I think that's like some nonsense.
Not with whiz or without?
No, I'm good all about fried onions, but no, it needs to be American or provolone or something. Yeah, right. That whiz is that's, again, if you're drunk, go for it. But if you are a sober Philadelphian, you have no business eating something with Cheese Whiz on it.
Ooh, gauntlet thrown. Ooh. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad you got to go to derbycon, and I wish that they were coming back again, but I understand that they're trying to create some derby community kind of stuff. Infosec campout's always available. We'll be here next year, so if you want to come and camp out with us, that'll be fun.
Neat. Okay. I'm grateful that I had the experience to go, and I was, like I said, I was well aware of what I was walking into, which was, the last call.
Right.
And so that changes the dynamic of it. But again, I'm not please don't, anyone who loves derbycon, I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'm just well aware that, yeah, like I was kind of crashing a family reunion / funeral sort of thing. And I just felt like I was respectful. I didn't bust up any people sitting around talking about the old days because I figured they wanted to do that. But no, I went to the mental health village. I went to see the vendors, the different little breakout things.
Yep.
It was a nice little conference, and I could just see how much joy it brought people. So that was just kind of fun to walk around as an outsider.
That's
and,
awesome.
And look at everything.
Yeah. I kind of feel the way you felt when I went to my first one too. I was like, oh, I'm on the outside looking in. All these people have been here before several years. It was an interesting thing. And, back then, I think the first year I went, I ended up getting a press pass. So a lot of people didn't know who I was. Actually, a lot of people still don't know who we were. But yeah, it was nice that they allowed us to give us press passes, because I ended up giving both my tickets away for this, so to people who could actually go. So you were talking earlier, and you said you felt a little out of your head and you didn't feel like you gave that talk very well. I watched that on YouTube, and I thought you killed it. You killed it.
Oh no!
You did
no,
awesome.
I don't think I didn't do well. I just think I just get nervous before I talk. That's all.
I didn't get any of that from you. You were like,
well, thank you.
Pow.
Well, I appreciate that. What happens with me is I'm like super nervous up until it's showtime. Then I'm all jazz hands and smiles.
Oh.
But yeah, and I had a roommate for this, so yeah, and she knows me, so I already warned her. I'm like, I'm going to be a maniac up until my time to talk.
Right.
But no, as soon as I get in front of that microphone, I'm good to go. But it's just leading up to it. It's just because I care too much. I just want it to be good. But no, I really appreciate that. Yeah, I wanted this to be a great talk. I wanted to be a part of the last derbycon and just give this great talk.
That was phenomenal. Yeah. So the reason we're having you on, other than the fact that Mr. Berlin and Mr. Betcher are out with family and stuff, and I wanted to have you on, was because I was really, really impressed with the talk, and I wanted to have you on again. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the talk. We're not going to talk about every part of the talk. We're just, I have a link in the show notes to the full discussion. If you want to post a different talk, like if you think you did better at the ISAC conference or whatever, we can always add that one to the show. But I watched the one from derbycon, other than the slight buzzing, which was not your fault with the audio.
Yeah.
It was a great, solid talk.
No. I think that I did well. That's not. I don't think I said that. I just said that I was nervous leading up to it. And this was the only time that this talk has been recorded. So that's the only one.
Oh, okay.
to watch. Yeah.
Well, I went to Jason Blanchard's talk on, I want to say it was Sunday morning. And he was talking about how, if you give these talks more than once, sometimes you'll go back and you'll watch talk from previous and be like, oh yeah, you might get some questions from that, and that will, you'll add that content to the next talk and whatever. So, you'll have a chance to hone that along the way. Learned a lot from his talk. Actually, it was probably one of the best talks I've seen at any derbycon or any conference I've been to, only because it really deeply affected me. I was like, oh, I'm not doing some stuff on the podcast I should be doing. Or,
gotcha.
I'm glad I'm doing some things that he's like verified that I'm doing things right. So, I'm just, making that up. So let's go ahead and get started with your talk, because we've spent a little time discussing you. The first thing you started off by saying was, and this was very shocking to me, Infosec is a service industry job. That kind of demeans the whole industry, doesn't it?
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
But
no, we are service.
You're an elitist if you think a service industry job is beneath you.
No, gods no. You're just preaching to the choir, because we are very service related. We are very customer facing, even though we don't like to admit it, or we don't want to necessarily be customer facing. Which I completely agree.
Can I say though, for those who haven't seen the talk yet, that slide, I had to stop because it got hoots and hollers and a round of applause, and I was not expecting that.
Yep.
I couldn't believe that happened. I was like, okay, all right, these people are with me then. This is great.
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're a SOC analyst, being in an MSSP, or if you're a red teamer, doing every bit. And we've had discussions about ITIL, which is a service based how to run your organization as a service-based organization. We actually need to have that guy back on again, or have another discussion about ITIL, because it was really awesome. But you hit it right on the head. We are a service-based industry. We always have been, always, I think will continue to be. And you say that customer service is an attitude, not a department. Could you expand upon that?
Sure. Well, a lot of times people think it's someone else's responsibility to provide customer service. And it's not someone else's, it's not, everybody should participate in customer service. It's not one centralized department. It's everybody's job. And that was, I didn't come up with that quote. That was a quote that I found, but I felt like that specifically articulated my point. But customer service is part of everybody's job. And it's an attitude you have, that you are, trying to connect with the end user or customer or patron or whatever, they are, or if it's another department. That was the other point that I was trying to drive home during my talk. I wasn't just talking about, what we call the end users. I also mean like your fellow tech departments. From our perspective, security touches everything, whether or not the other tech departments believe it. That's where your customer service comes in. You need to be nice to them as well. Right. Even though they may be tech savvy enough and maybe know better to do some things, you still need to treat them with customer service, because we all work together in the same organization. So I was trying to drive home the point that I'm not just talking about, the admin assistants and the vice presidents. I'm talking about, maybe the network architecture department, or, some other tech division within your company.
Right. So you mentioned it's not just a department. I mean, you could even be customer service within your own security department as well, depending on what taskings you have, or, like a PM could be a customer, customer facing, but, just to the testers, or, to whatever. So I was thinking along the lines of that for myself in a consultancy. So, I have specific taskings. When somebody comes and asks me a question, I am now customer service, because I have to answer that question. Yes, you will be working on this engagement next week, or no, it's not you, it's these other folks. And yes, I need to make sure that I look at your report and I do this. So yeah, it's all customer service, and how you deliver that is very important. So,
are you familiar with the term ombudsman?
Oh yeah. The Navy had ombudsmans.
Yeah, so that's also, again, for the next version of my talk. I think I definitely want to work that in there, that concept of, because you hit the nail on the head with the project manager. Maybe you have a point person to field the customer service, to then distribute things or guide things or things like that. However your organization sees fit to do it, but you need to have some sort of customer service attitude.
Right. So you started out with another slide, something called the reference interview. I'd never heard of that before, but you broke it down into 7 different sections: approachability, interest, listening, interviewing, searching, answering, follow-up. And so where did the reference interview thing come from?
It's from library science. Okay. I don't know exactly where it originated, but it's something when I was in graduate school for my library science degree, that it was just, I'm joking when I say this, it was beat into us, but I mean, it's something that we discuss, and that we break down, and that we analyze. And it's just these steps that by the time you get your graduate degree in library science, it's like second nature to you. And it's called the reference interview because its initial purpose was meant for like intake of, when you're interacting with a library patron, trying to figure out what it is that they want or they need, because also what people want and what they need can be 2 different things. Right. They can be asking for one thing, but what they really need is another. And I ran into that all the time with the attorneys. A lot of them would be very intent on asking for this one specific title, when I would have to say to them, I know you're asking for this, but what you really need is this. And, being able to anticipate those needs, right, is where that came in. So yeah, when I joined the InfoSec world as a SOC analyst, how this talk came about is I was just very shocked how end users are being treated, not just in my workplace, but just like looking at, say InfoSec Twitter, for example, and seeing just the disdain and contempt. And I'm thinking to myself, like, they're why we have jobs. And, unless your company actually produces a security product, most of us are performing a security service.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that really didn't sit well with me. So I was trying to problem solve. And that's when I just kind of had this light bulb moment of, oh, this is a reference interview situation. And how can it's like, oh, let me figure out a way to correlate this so that I can explain to people, how you adopt this attitude, because these steps have already been outlined for us. So that's kind of how this all began.
Right. My wife works for a company, and she's an Uber PM, program management, portfolio manager kind of stuff. And she does the 5 whys. So when somebody comes in, we need to do this. She's like, why? And by the time she gets about the 5th why, she gets the right query.
Mm-hmm.
She gets the right answer. It's like, oh, okay, well, we need to be able to move a file. Okay.
Yeah.
What you're wanting to do is way overkill. So I'm hearing a lot of parallels between what
mm-hmm.
the interview, the reference interview, and what you're doing there. So that's pretty awesome. You had several stories in your discussion. I got the E.E. Cummings reference when you mentioned that.
Thank you.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that went over a lot better than I expected it to. I was very surprised.
Yeah. So you,
I think we should explain that. So I made an off the cuff comment of talking about how you rate emails to your end users.
Right.
And I said, look, you're not E.E. Cummings. Use full sentences and punctuation.
Right.
Because the poet E.E. Cummings is famous for just doing these all lowercase, no punctuation, free thought poetry. But when you're corresponding with your end users, I gave an example of, you need to have a salutation. I was able to show an example of, in 2 sentences, I was able to convey 4 very important pieces of information. You have a closing sentiment, and then you have your name, and, basically, your SIG file, like, who are you? Where do you fit into all of this? How are you going to help me? So the 2 pieces or the 4 pieces of information in the 2 sentences was, it was, thanking them, because my point was they didn't have to contact you. So you need to thank them for contacting you. Right. The second is you reiterate why they contacted you. Just saying that generic, like, thank you for your email, that can read like, I didn't really look at it. I didn't really look at it. So you reiterate, thank you for contacting us about the phishing email or the suspicious email you received. What was my second sentence was, we will review and get back to you within a business day. Tell them the action you're going to take and give a reasonable amount of time was that when they can expect an answer. And then it was like, sincerely, and my name. And a lot of people, like, I could see that was a revelation to them.
Yeah. Even myself, because I don't like necessarily writing them, because I don't like writing a lot of email. To be honest, I'm actually more of an in-person kind of communicator. Mm-hmm. My worry is that when I send something out, I'm not very tactful, or I lack. I don't know if I'm getting my point across when I'm writing in an email. So for me, working at Leviathan actually has been somewhat of a godsend, because I can actually go to the people that I'm asking the question of and say, hey, here's what I need to talk about. I don't send the email and then follow up. I actually just go to them and say, hey, I need to talk to you about this. But yeah, it does take a bit of finessing to get that done, because I do work with a lot of customers, and I agonize over the emails that I send. And sometimes an email that should really only take about 30 minutes has taken me anywhere between, an hour to an hour and a half to send. And that's wasted time and effort, as much as I hate to admit it. But it's like, did I get all the information in? Does it make sense? Are they going to have questions? Because my thing is, I always try to threat model my emails. It's like, well, what are they going to ask after this? I need to make sure that I add that. And then by the time I, overthink it, it's like, oh, is this email going to be good enough? Is it going to suck? Am I going to have to write them yet another email? So yeah, I'm probably overthinking the whole deal of approachability, but tone of writing is very hard. It's very hard. It's definitely a skill that you have to learn over time. So,
but you hit the nail on the head, which I addressed the start of my talk, is that these are things that you can learn and hone. I mean, like anything, some people it's going to come more easily to others, but it's not impossible. It can be learned. Right. And honed. And that's why I wanted to show that example of how just 2 sentences can convey so much information.
Right.
And it's definitely something that can be learned. And, it took 2 seconds to write the email, you're off, and then you can work on solving the problem and do that. Yeah.
So you told a story about, you said, I didn't know there were humans in security. This was a lady who had sent you an email. What was the climate like at your organization that it was such that she didn't actually realize people worked in that department?
Well, this happened, I would say within my first month of starting. So I was still, everything. This is my first job in security, so everything was new to me. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, the best that I could tell and what I'm remembering from that time, because now it's been 2 years, I think it's just that they didn't really interact with end users, didn't reply to emails. I think that things just didn't get answered or very rarely. And that's what my guess is, because I just remember, replying to something and her just kind of being gobsmacked that there were people, on the other end. And that's when I started asking questions like, well, what do you mean you don't talk to these people? And I don't understand. So that just did not seem intuitive to me. So it was just basically, I think she submitted something that she thought was suspicious. And I, did some sort of reply, and that's when I got that response, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I can share with you an exclusive. I forgot to tell this story during my talk, but Sweet. One of my favorite responses, or probably my number one favorite response that we ever received from an end user was this woman addressed an email to the security department, and the salutation was "Dear fish people" with a PH. Dear fish people.
Okay. Dear fish people.
I think I tweeted that when we got it in. I just captioned the dear fish people. I didn't send anything else, but I just was howling with laughter, and I thought it was hilarious. Like, dear fish people.
Why did she do that? Was it she only heard from you guys when you were conducting fishing exercises?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I can't remember the rest of the email now, but I just thought it was hilarious that she rather than writing like dear security or whatever, right. It was dear fish people. And I'm like, I'll take it.
Okay. Could be worse, I guess.
It just made me laugh, and I was like, okay, so I don't know. I just thought it was really funny.
Right on. Okay. So what you were doing there is obviously you were building rapport. So, mm-hmm. and you were building a relationship, however minor it is. But, we've talked to Noid about this, about building rapport. I believe I talked about it with him. We were talking about, getting people on your side, creating allies in other departments so that you can, get things done. I've listened to Manager Tools a couple of times where they're saying, politics is just, relationships at work or, relationships that you're exercising. You're all about building rapport as well, is what it sounds like here, that you need to, one, when you're sending the emails, you're building a rapport with people. If you're, helping them with something, you're building a rapport. You're creating this bank of rapport that you can pull from whenever favors are needed, or when you're building that relationship, and you can draw upon that relationship when when you need it, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. You're building trust.
Right. Yeah. And you said, what was it? Trust, something as a currency. Empathy is I forget if it's empathy or trust.
Kindness is a currency.
That's it. Kindness coin. Yeah. Very nice. So how long does it take for something like that to work? It's not obviously immediate, because you've got to build it. One thing does not necessarily make, a good relationship.
Well, I would argue about that because I did mention in the talk about how I would send out my cyber cupcake and how I
Okay.
would have an immediate positive reaction to that. So for those of you who didn't see my talk yet, what I call the cyber cupcake is I literally had a JPEG of a cartoon cupcake that I would save on my desktop. And if somebody submitted something to security that was, say, for example, if say it was a phishing email that was a particularly well done phish, like an advanced phish, but that they were, suspicious and submitted it and, didn't click on it and like they spotted it, I would reward them. You need to reward, good behavior and positive reinforcement. So again, working in a global company, I don't have the luxury of seeing people in person like you do. So I came up with this idea of, here's a cupcake. Great job, Eagle Eye. That was a really hard fish to catch and you caught it. And here's a cupcake,
Right.
for you. Or I said, here's your cyber cupcake. And I would get responses from people going, this made my day. This made my week. I wasn't sure about that email and thank you for confirming. And I had nothing but immediate positive response to just sending a JPEG of a cupcake out
Right.
just to reward someone for good behavior.
Right. So let's say, I don't know, you work at a company and cyber cupcakes aren't their bag. Are there any other ways that you could do something to help people? I was thinking, attaboys, or I don't know, take an hour off, or small value gift cards, Starbucks cards come to mind.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I was working on a project before I left we were trying to figure out a way to have on a monthly basis reward someone. But it was difficult with it being a global company. You
Right.
wanted things to be fair, and it would turn into a logistical nightmare. So that's why I just went back to doing my cyber cupcakes because that didn't matter. There's all kinds. I mean, it's gamification basically. So
Right.
yes, and if JPEGs don't float in your enterprise, then just some kind words of, hey, just a quick note to tell you that was a really sophisticated fish, and thank you for submitting it. Really great job. Keep up the good work. Just some kind words that can take 2 seconds, if you can't do emoji and fun things like that. But yeah, if you are a smaller organization that can actually give away a tangible product reward, then definitely investigate that. Figure out some sort of parameters to reward people.
Right. Yeah, and the reason I was like, small value gift cards is you might run into potential was it ABC, bribery, extortion kind of stuff.
So figure out what works for your organization, and but at the very minimum, just kind words.
That's cool.
Don't cost anything, and
That's
don't
right.
take very long to do.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, and that was something I came away with. The other thing I came away with was the teachable moments. So when you're answering that email, you're like, oh yeah, it wasn't necessarily fish, but while you're on the phone, or while I've got you with an email or something like that, here's another thing that you can learn about. You mentioned what was it, password lockers, I think.
Password managers.
Sorry, I call them lockers.
Yeah. No. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, teachable moments too. I'm not sure where it originated, but it was something that we very heavily stressed in library school.
Okay.
About turning inquiries into teachable moments. Password managers. I gave the example of, you've heard of show and tell. I want you to tell then show. I want you to flip that around, because you can't just say to someone, I know there's a lot of Infosec people who think by just telling someone you need to use a password manager that they've done their job. And my point was, okay, that means nothing. Like, you need to actually, show someone how to do it, show them how it works. Now, I'm very well aware that in your personal or work life, you may not have time to do that. So what's the next best thing? Tell them where they can find the information.
Right.
That's going to be, easy. Like, you can't just say, use a password manager and feel like your job is done.
Right.
That's not it. So that's kind of what my point was of figure out a way to give them knowledge, and then that's more helpful than just saying something and walking. Like, you can't just say encryption and walk away.
Right.
That's not helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and some companies get away with that by, putting in a policy to mandate that you have a password manager. So you're forcing people doesn't always make it good, because, they could just put a weak password inside the manager and continue on. So yeah, you have to build that. And your culture of security, you mentioned that quite a bit, which I completely agree. That takes time to cultivate your culture. You can't just create culture overnight, or, voila, instant culture, because then it's going to taste like crap. So, let me see, what else did we have? I know I'm bouncing around all over the place. I apologize.
I'm just thrilled that you like my talk, so thank you.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Yeah. So you talked about interviewing, repeating back what the users. That would
Arkansas must have scored.
Yes, my wife, the Razorback fan. Yes.
There was a bunch of clapping in case you didn't hear it.
So you said repeat back what the user said. Were you at a job that required a lot of phone calls? Because obviously in some places where you're doing a lot of email, you don't have the customer interaction.
I instituted more phone calls than there were, but I was also drawing from just past experience in general. In the library, we relied on the phone a lot.
Right.
But also repeating back can also be in an email still. Just the concept of reiterating what it is. Like when I mentioned my sample email reply, you're repeating back to them why, they contacted you.
Right.
So whether it's verbally or written, do something. So again, I gave the example of, the thank you for your email doesn't cut it in my mind, because it raises a lot of questions of, well, do they even really know why I contacted them? If you write down or repeat verbally why they contacted you, that provides a better level of service.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
And also to help any confusion, because you may not be on the same page. So you may think that you understand the problem, and it's very possible that the person didn't articulate it correctly.
That makes sense.
Because again, they might be using a lot of buzzwords. Because I had this happen a lot in the law firms. People would ask for things, and you could just sense that they were just using words that they didn't really understand what they meant.
Yeah.
And keep in mind also too, I was a travel agent before I was a librarian. So a lot of times people would say things that you just get the spidey sense of like, I don't think they know what they're asking for. So by repeating it back, you can also gauge of whether or not you're understanding what they're asking for, and for them to hear what they're asking.
Right.
Because a lot of times you'll say something back to someone like, oh no, that's not what I meant at all. And then you can clarify that up, because why do you want to go troubleshoot the wrong thing? Right. That's a waste of your time. So it behooves you to repeat back the issue to make sure you're on the same page, so that you're not wasting time.
Right. Yeah. Now, what I've done, especially since I don't necessarily talk to customers a lot and it's a lot of email or Slack or whatever, I tend to take pieces out of their original email and kind of quote it. So it's like, here, they got their question and I put my response underneath. It helps, track the conversation, because after a while, some of them email threads get fairly lengthy. So I try to clarify communication as much as possible. Try to, address each issue that they have, and I've been trying to make shorter, more to the point emails, but it seems to me that I need, for some customers, it would be helpful if I just had like maybe a canned response or something I could always send out. That way, everyone ends up getting the same message, and there's no like, well, you said this in this email and this in another email. I need to work on my communication.
And I did recommend canned responses in my talk, that, if there's something that you're communicating frequently, save time by just, taking, 20 minutes to sit down and write it clearly, with maybe, leaving gaps to fill in any, customized information. I did that all the time as a librarian. I told you there were certain books that the lawyers would ask for,
right,
that they would always, say interchange titles for. I had emails all ready to go of, I know you asked me for this, but I know that you mean this. And I would have pictures. Pictures are handy too. I didn't really get into this too much during my talk, but showing someone a screenshot of a phishing site that they may have gone to helps, because people either get scared or nervous or forgetful or whatever. Especially if it was something that required a lot more investigation, I would definitely send them screenshots of like, when you click that link, did you see this on the next screen? And they could be like, oh yeah, that's what I saw. Okay, great. Then let's go from there. Same thing. I said lawyers with books. A lot of them knew them by sight, didn't know them by title. So I would have a lot of canned responses ready to go. And what, a lot of lawyers would call books by their color. So
I need the blue book.
Yeah. Well, and it's only about 10,000 excellent point. So there is literally a citation book called the Blue Book. But then there are other books that are just blue in color. So yes, and there was a New York law book that they always called the Yellow Book. Now, not to be confused with the Yellow Pages.
Right.
It was the Yellow Book. So you had to anticipate these needs because, again, sometimes they would get things wrong, and that's why pictures came in handy, of like, oh yes, that's the one that I want. So again, because ultimately it saves time in the end.
Right.
That's what I want people to get through their heads. You're going to be saving yourself time by preparing these things ahead of time, because you can just shoot off these emails with pictures, without pictures, whatever. And it just saves so much time.
Right. So did you, as a librarian, you had a classification for all the books, but did you ever have like the top 50 books and like a shelf off to the side that you knew people would be coming to regularly, so that you could reduce the amount of time it took you to do that? I mean, that's my thought of what a canned response would be. It's like, oh, I need the yellow book. Boom, right here.
Well, keep in mind, a lot of what we did was digital.
Oh, okay.
But as far as physical books go, yeah, most libraries have what's called a ready reference section, and we had that as well. So yeah, the most often used books, or just like general reference books, we had an easy access area for that. Yeah, most libraries have some sort of what's called ready reference.
Oh, okay.
To do that, but then again, also a lot of stuff is digital or was online research or things like that. One of the funniest emails we would get all the time in the law firm was we would get an email from an attorney with a link to an article and them going, I need a copy of this article. Like, I need this article. And all we would do was click the link and print it as a PDF and send it back to them. And they thought we were magicians.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that happened way too often. It was we couldn't get them to I couldn't get them to understand. And it wasn't that, now don't get me wrong, it wasn't that they were reluctant to click the link for any phishing things, because keep in mind, by now this was at least 5 or more years ago, when that was less in the common vernacular.
Sure.
It was just, for some reason, they just couldn't comprehend. I don't know what. I was going to try to explain this. I have no words. I don't know. But all we would do would be click the link and just then send it as a PDF back to them, and we were magic.
Obviously. Well, maybe they, I don't want to dog on lawyers, but yeah, I've never seen tech Luddites like a lawyer.
Some of them are. Now, the ones that deal with, say, patents, for example, are usually more tech savvy, because most of the time they have a STEM background. Mm-hmm. So any of the patent trademark attorneys that I dealt with were always really tech savvy. A lot of the corporate attorneys were very app and gadget savvy, because those were usually fun, shiny toys,
right,
and things.
Right.
What I don't think people realize is, a lot, generally speaking, I'm using a lot of generalizations here, the type of law you practice, and the personality type is usually intertwined. Some people might be drawn to some areas of law, things like that. So also then, as a librarian, I had to remember how to speak to these different types of people.
Right.
Or again, if it was something like tech related, I knew if it was a patent trademark attorney, I could use a little bit more tech jargon with
Right.
them than with a different type of attorney. So again, that's how you also had to show your customer service by making sure you were giving the right message to that particular end user.
That's understandable. Okay. So, you have so let's say I work for an organization. Well, I do work for an organization, but let's say let's say you work for an organization and you've watched Tracy's talk or you've watched your talk, and you mentioned if there's one thing that you could come away with and implement in your organization, try to find that one thing. What would be one of the easiest things that they could implement? Would it be the canned emails? Would it be just, spending a few extra minutes, helping one person a day? I mean, what would be a quick win for somebody who's looking to move towards that empathy goal?
That's a great question. I'm going to have to start at the beginning with approachability of, practicing just your attitude, your mental attitude towards the end users, because a bad attitude can very easily come out in an email, whether or not you even speak to your end users. How you word an email, if you have disdain and contempt for your users, that's going to come through, right, whether you realize it or not. So I really think the easiest thing and the most basic thing is just to change that attitude of having empathy to be approachable.
Okay.
And I think everything else kind of falls into place. So if you can first change your mindset that you are providing customer service and you need to be approachable. And I know that some people maybe cringe and retract from that. I mean, I don't mean like people coming up and hugging you. I just mean people feeling that they can come to you as a security department. Maybe not you specifically, but that the security team is approachable to raise questions and issues too. That's what I mean. And hopefully that was clear during my talk, because I am well aware that there are some people who are maybe taking me very literally and thinking like, well, I don't want people talking to me directly.
Right.
Okay, if that's not your skill set, but what you can do is I ask that you change, your attitude. So if people can change their attitude about it, I think that's a great first minimal step.
Right. Well, my changing my attitude, it all comes down to pretty much the first person I see in the day. I mean, there's been places where it's like, great, I'm going to have to deal with Bob again, or here's my obligatory Monday email from, Jim, because Jim's clicked on yet another link, or, he's wondering what this pop-up is that says he needs to update his system, Well,
do you remember the phrase that I told everyone is your new mantra?
No, I do not.
Bless their heart.
Oh, yes.
I said, rather than have, curse words in your head or out loud, just take a deep breath, bless their heart for trying. But I mean, it's your job. I know it can be frustrating. I am absolutely there. And I told a week before my last day at my old job, I ran into some end users who were trying me. They were testing me. But what I did was I managed to channel that into some parts of my talk for derbycon.
Right.
I was able to catch my breath and think, oh, wait, this is an opportunity to work this into my talk. And I did just that. So, I get what you're saying, that like, you can have one bad interaction and that can kind of ruin you for the day. But, you need to just get over that. It needs to, each interaction needs to be unique. It's, a window closes, windows opens, it needs to be, okay, this is a brand new, fresh approach. And, get your frustration out as you can, not on that new person. Like I said, if it's just take a deep breath, bless their heart for trying, and then move on. And just to clarify for those who didn't hear my talk, I am well aware that at its core, that is not a nice saying. The way a lovely Southern woman explained it to me was, it is a not nice thing said in a nice way. And that's basically, the gist of it is, I get it. I get that you want to get frustration out. I get that you want to, to just say something really like cutting and whatever. But I have found if you can try to keep it light and pleasant, you can still get the sentiment out. Now, this is not something that I recommend you say directly to the person. This is why I call it a mantra. I want you to say it inside your head or discreetly to yourself, or within closed circles. This is not something you say to your end user. It's this mindset of they are trying their best with what they're given, with their knowledge. It is a service industry job. It is my job to help them. Exhale, move on to the next person. It's a brand new opportunity.
Right. It sounds like you're also, when I was working one of my first jobs, well, it was actually in the Navy. When I would answer the phone, my lieutenant would tell me, smile when you're talking because they can hear the smile.
I said that during my talk. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
I've had many customer facing jobs, and some of them were just, on the phone. And I know it sounds corny, and I know people, are probably reluctant to try it, but it helps if you are smiling while you're talking, just on the phone, even if they can't see you.
Right.
You'll be more pleasant. And I did that tons of times in the SOC. I sat there with a giant grin on my face, staring at my computer, trying to figure out the problem for someone after telling me they clicked on something that to me looked very obvious. It was a fish, but you know what, we're gonna, and also make them feel empowered. It's like, okay, well, try to get them to help answer questions too, make them a part of it. Because kind of the other thing is they're taking time out of their day. So my kind of weird psychology of this that I think is they don't really want to be on the phone with security either.
Right.
So
right.
If you engage them and also make it part of their problem to solve it, if you get what I'm saying, then like that'll help them learn it quicker, in theory, because they don't want to be on the phone with you either. So it's like, oh, okay, I got this for next time, then I won't do this, because again, the more you involve them, it's like, okay, well, we're going to solve this together, is what I would say to people. Yeah. And like, it's like, nope, this, let's work on this together. You don't ever say it's kind of like a passive aggressive way of saying like, well, this is your fault and you need to help clean it up. You never want to say that to someone, but it's just kind of like, okay, like, this is something that you brought to me, but we're going to work on it together.
Right.
And I've found that people have been amenable to that, and it's definitely helped them kind of get into shape and learn stuff.
Yeah. So the one question that I had here, one of many, is that under searching, it says, did security fail the user? Security never fails the user. The user fails the user, right?
No. I wish I could think of a better example on the spot, but just there definitely was a time I remember when I was troubleshooting that something either wasn't set up right, or I'm drawing a blank now, but yeah, just figure out if something else was to blame.
Right.
Subrogation. Figure out if there's another part. Because sometimes that's possible. Sometimes something else failed.
Right.
And so, figure that out. Like, what I was getting at ultimately by bringing that up was just don't automatically blame the user. There are some instances when it's just really not their fault. There might be something else to blame, and it could be a policy.
Right.
It could be a policy that's flawed. So if you have, 20, 50 people, in the same situation, and it points back to a policy, okay, well then somebody needs to raise this issue.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. It could be a policy, it could be a setting, it could be a product. Just rule out that it wasn't something else, because then that's your new issue then, is to get that other issue fixed.
Right. And that was my point. It's like everybody's worked in a place where, we put in a policy because of compliance, or we put in a policy because it's just straight up good security. And maybe they're an outlier, maybe they're an edge case or something that this policy just completely breaks their workflow, or makes it a nightmare for them to work, or, they're a remote worker. So, turning off something doesn't allow them to, authenticate to Active Directory. And, we require that for PCI or whatever. So, yeah.
Oh, I just thought of an example, actually. Sorry, as you were talking. So I'm going to kind of keep this vague though. So this one department within the organization, I'm going to say it's HR. It wasn't HR. Would have a standard email that they would send to people that people always submitted as suspicious, and it never was.
Right.
And when I personally noticed the amount of times I saw that email reported, I thought, this is a waste of time for security because we know that it's fine. So what I did was I reached out to the not really HR department. I reached out to the department who was sending it out, and I talked to whomever was in charge, and I made a teachable moment of, here's how you can better design your email to not make it look like a phishing email.
Yeah.
And they took my advice and they redesigned it. And I saw a dramatic decrease in them being reported. That's for awesome. That. So again, that was just something that I did proactively because I could hear everyone around me complaining like, oh, these emails again, like it's just going to keep happening unless we do something about it.
Right. And that would be a downside of using like the canned emails. If you just keep sending them out blindly and you don't go, well, is this still applicable? It's almost like a policy. You send the canned emails out after so many months. Maybe they need to be reviewed like a policy to make sure that they still make sense. Maybe there's a contact information in there that needs to be updated. Maybe the policy has changed, so the email should change as well. So, you need to make sure that they still make sense, or don't throw off any false positives.
Yep.
Don't put this is not a phishing email inside the body. That's not going to make it any better. Yeah.
Yeah, they had to redesign the whole thing because everything about it, I was showing them. I was like, well, this looks suspicious. I'm like, this looks really suspicious. And I understood why the end users thought that.
Yeah,
I got it. It wasn't. So again, that's where my example is. It's not their fault. This thing looked fishy as hell, and it wasn't their fault. They did the right thing, but it was creating more work for the security team when we could have spent time doing other more important things. So that's when I was like, all right, I need to talk to your manager. Yeah. I need to talk to someone in charge.
So something like, you go through phishing training and it tells them these are indicators that this might be a phish. And then of course the canned email has like blind links, or it may have something in there that lights that off. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. So I was like, let's redesign this.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I know that we just wanted to kind of do a general overview of your talk. Your talk at derbycon is in our show notes. It's also on Iron Geek's website. You can go look for it. Empathy as a Service, and you can go search for that. That's how I found it. I was on Iron Geek's site, but I couldn't find it that way. So I did a Google search for Empathy as a Service and Tracy's name and found it fairly instantly. Iron Geek has good SEO, I guess. So is there anything else that you'd like to, last thoughts or anything you'd like to bring up before we go?
No, I think this is an important topic, and I was just so pleased how well it was received at derbycon. Like I said, I wasn't sure. I knew this was a technical audience, and I am well aware that not everyone has skill sets to handle a lot of these things that I'm asking of people. But that's what I want people to understand, is that these are skills that you can build, or you can grow on, or you can be good at one thing and maybe a coworker can be good at another. I'm not asking people to become completely well-rounded. I've had customer service facing jobs for like my entire working adult life. So this has been cultivated over many, many years. I don't expect someone unfamiliar with this to just be able to jump in and feel as comfortable as I do picking up the phone, which, I gave an example in my talk that my coworkers would be shocked of, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm calling an end user. And like, you're calling them, you're talking to them. Like, yes, like this is going to be the easiest way to solve this problem. So don't get stressed out. I'm not asking people to, walk away. Keep in mind, this took me, my adult lifetime to cultivate all this. So like I said, pick one thing that you can work on. If it's writing emails, for you, like if it's writing short, to the point emails, work on that.
Right.
And, and that's better than nothing. You're working towards a goal. So, I already have some ideas of how to tweak it further. I don't want to become one of those people, though, that's like a one-trick pony and giving the same talk. So I haven't figured out the next con that I like to submit this to. If anyone has any ideas, please tweet at me. But yeah, I'd like to tweak this further and streamline it even further and give it again.
Would you like to come to Seattle in February? I know of a B-Sides that would enjoy having it, and I know that CFP for that will be out soon. I'm sure Joff.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we're at usually they have it at the Microsoft Commons, but yeah, it's in February. Maybe I'll make sure I retweet that out when the CFP for B-Sides Seattle's coming up. So you can come up and hang out and have a coffee at Starbucks or something. Anyway, cool. All right. Well, for people who don't know who you are, never seen you or anything like that, how would they get a hold of you to talk about empathy as a service, library sciences, your blog, your Nuzzle? How would they find you?
Sure. Well, the easiest way is on Twitter. I'm Infosec Sherpa. I tweet a lot about my Nuzzle newsletter, which is just nuzzle.com/Infosec Sherpa. My Osinti Goodness blog is medium.com/@Infosec Sherpa, because I guess Medium has to be different.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I actually I thought the @ was a misspelling or something.
That's how you find it. Yeah.
Weird. Okay.
And LinkedIn, I'm more apt to connect with you on LinkedIn if we've actually interacted at some point. So if you do not know me at all, please reach out to me on Twitter first. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I like to have some sense of who I'm connecting with on LinkedIn.
All right. Let me see. Do you and I follow one another here on the LinkedIns? Let's see. Come on. Page not found. Oh, maybe it's a different Tracy Maleeff.
You're accenting the wrong syllable.
Yeah. Women Infosec. I'll have to find it again. Anyway. All right. Well, cool. Are you going to be? I know you said you wanted to give this talk at another conference. Are you going to be at any other conferences speaking or not, where people could come and hang out?
So we are already connected first level. So yes, I just checked. Yes.
Superstar.
No, at this time, I do not have any other conferences. While I did purchase a B-Sides DC ticket, I'm actually giving that away to a group, connecting students with tickets.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be at that. I know that I really want to go to B-Sides Northern Virginia, B-Sides Charm. Those are two of my absolute favorites, but that's not until March and April.
Okay.
So yeah, I am an Infosec Sherpa without a con for the next few months.
Well, dang! I know I'm gonna be at DefendCon, which is in Seattle. Maybe you can hit that one next year if you want to. They've got a lot of great speakers who are gonna be there for that. So cool. Yeah. So let me see. Got some things to talk about. Brakesec has a Patreon for those of you who found value in this discussion or any of the other 280 odd podcasts over the last 5 and some odd years. We use that money for hosting fees, for the Zoom that we're using right now to talk to one another, and just time and effort to get a podcast out, because that takes time, effort, and it's not easy. So if you're interested, you can definitely reach out, and some even a dollar helps out. So if you've gotten value from this discussion, feel free to hit us up on our tip jar there. We call it tip jar. So. Got some training. One of our Brakesec slackers, Nicholas, he goes by NXVL on Twitter, is doing a Python secure coding class. It starts on November the 2nd. If you're interested in that, it's going to be 5 sessions over a Saturday. We tried to do it on a Saturday so that we could get as many people around the world as possible involved. I think it starts around 8 or 9 o'clock Pacific time. I think I have it set to 1800 GMT time. So that's for those in England and whatever, it starts at 6 p.m. So you have to work backwards. It'll be 7 or 8 hours for us. So it'll be like 9 or 10 o'clock for Pacific folks. There's a link in the show notes to sign up on Eventbrite for it. It is $200 for 5 sessions. And if you know where to look, there's actually a 15% coupon if you get on our Slack. So if you are interested in getting 15% off on the class, you go find and join our Slack, which I'll tell you about in a second. And you can get 15% off on the class if you wanted to do that. We're going to be discussing OWASP Top 10, web application vulnerabilities, how to find them, and also how to defend against them. So that it looks like some excellent training. And let me see.
Can I just give a shameless shout out to Ed?
Ed's last name?
Rojas.
Oh, Ed, yeah, Mr. Rojas. Sure, yeah.
Mr. Rojas. So behind me is a hand-woven tapestry from Colombia that I got while I was at the Tactical Edge conference.
Very nice.
In Bogota in October of 2016. So go check out Tactical Edge on social media. I believe they have something coming up in November, but I just felt compelled since this came from Colombia and it makes me think of Ed when I see it. So
yeah, Tactical Edge.
Shout out to Ed.
Yeah, Tactical Edge 2019. Oh, it was actually, well, no, that's the
They had a
International
CISO summit last week, but there's something else coming up in November, which I'm not going to it, so I don't have it memorized. But
I see.
Shout out to Mr. Rojas, who's a big supporter of Brakesec.
Yeah, Tactical Edge 2019. Looks like Chad Loader of Habituate, I think, is going to be speaking there. Judy Towers talking about subversion and espionage. David Mortman, there's no cloud, it's just someone else's regulator. That's pretty funny. Sorry.
That is funny.
Cheryl Biswas. Yes, botnets and miners. I love Cheryl. She's awesome. I've seen her several times. Dave Lewis. Well, it's a lot of very cool talks. Looks like happening there. I'm still looking for the date. That's not very good. Let me see.
That sounds like that may have been last year's.
2019. Maybe, I don't know. Talk to Ed online and find out, and he can definitely get you information about that if you are.
Just look at Tactical Edge, and it's Edge with a 3, Tactical 3 DGE.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's that would be something. My problem is I'm up here about as far north as you can get in the United States, and it's a bit of a haul to come down all the way to South America. But I have heard great things about it. Jay Street, I believe, Andy. No, was it? It was Andrew Kellett actually spoke there a couple years ago and said he had a phenomenal time on Defensive Security podcast. So, I had a great time there. So, so we have a TeePublic store. If you want to get a custom Brakesec t-shirt or coffee mug or anything, you can hit up our TeePublic store. That is teepublic.com/user/BDS podcast, all one word. Ms. Berlin is doing a lot of great work. I hung out quite a bit at the Mental Health Village. You said you visited that. How was that for you? Did you enjoy that?
I saw. It was my second time because when I was at the Layer 8 conference in June, I saw that one.
Right.
It smelled nice and it was a nice vibe. I went in there briefly to just kind of sit and there weren't any talks going on, but I just kind of wanted to be in there. And I brought my own knitting, and next thing I know, I wound up teaching other people how to knit. I'm not the best knitting instructor, so I don't think it went over very well, but there was actually someone assigned to be teaching knitting, so she eventually came in and did that. But I have to just say it just smelled very nice. That was the first thing that was good, that it was just like a different air in there. It was very nice. It was nice. And there's just definitely things. I never signed up for a massage. I don't know why. I kept forgetting to do that. No, I mean, I think it's great that it exists, and I would love to see it underwritten so that Amanda could run it full time. With, was it Megan?
Megan.
Her help? Megan,
Megan Roddy.
If they could run it full time. I think it's very much needed. I'd love to see a talk. I'd love to see some professionals come in, maybe to talk about like triggers or like warning signs, so that maybe in the community you can help better identify other people struggling. I'd definitely love to see talks from mental health professionals, kind of cluing us in of either self-care techniques or how to look out for things for others. I think that would be a great thing to do if any mental health professionals would like to talk to the Infosec community.
That's cool. Yeah. I was helping out quite a bit. I did see the knitting, the folks doing the knitting, which was very interesting. I saw a talk there on neurodiversity and, how to, with Megan and a couple of other folks there was talking about things that actually was like, I do that. Wait, I do that too. And it's like, it made me start wondering if I was actually on the spectrum at some point, or if I needed to go get tested, or, and it's not like a normal test. It's like there's some additional stuff that has to happen to do proper diagnosis. But there were some things that I was like, maybe me and my spawn need to go get checked, because she does things that I do some of the very similar things. So I was like, there's some very interesting things there. So I got a lot out of it. I got a lot out of the talks there. So if you are at a conference where that's happening, go and at least spend an hour or so in there with massage therapist, or just learning some coping techniques. So that was pretty cool. So. Yep. Ms. Berlin, you can find her on Twitter, and you can also find her on our Slack at InfoSyster, INFOSYSTIR, and she is the president of the Mental Health Hackers Organization, and that on Twitter is at Hackers Health, HACKERS Health. Mr. Betcher, of course, hopefully he's having a better time than my wife is right now in the football game. He is at Betcherpwned on Twitter, BOETTCHERPWNED. He's also the lead developer on LogMD, which is a logging tool for Windows that allows you to better investigate indicators of compromise through log files and through activities that occur on the system. So they don't pay us for that, but he's on here enough. I figure he's already paid his dues, so might as well give him a little bump. So log-md.com is the website for that. So Slack, if you want to join our Slack, we have short of 2,000 accounts, roughly about 450 active users on the reg. A lot of stuff going on in there. We have a book club. We have CTF Club, which we just did today. Brakesec went through HTTP smuggling, which I don't even know what the hell that is, so I've got to go watch the video myself. A lot of fun stuff there. We have a GRC and privacy channel. We have a Hanging the Shingle channel, which is very interesting. So folks who are trying to become independent consultants can go in and trade notes with other folks who are also independent consultants. And we have a bunch of other leadership, malware and bots. We have a threat hunting channel. We have a SIM and logging club. I don't know if they've met in the last few weeks, but you can always go in if you're having SIM issues or you work as a SOC analyst like Ms. Tracy did here previously. You can go in and ask any kind of heartache and issues that you might have with your SIM at your org. So you can send us a DM on Twitter at Brakesec, which is our official podcast, BRAKESCC. Or you can send an email to bds.podcast@gmail.com. So finally, cool. Last and mostly least, you can follow me on Twitter at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. I mostly put out memes, and I don't shit post, but I tend to retweet interesting things that I find, or, I think I had on my little devil horns the other day playing the Bastard PM from Hell. So, so that's what I do. So,
gotcha.
All right. Well, Tracy, it's always a pleasure having you on. We'll have you on again this time next year. Is that okay?
The same time next year, sure.
Yes. Okay. We'll mark it down.
But thank you for having me.
Yeah,
this was fun to deconstruct my talk. I enjoyed it.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think that was it for Bringing Down Security this week. Everyone have a great week. Be kind to one another. Take care of yourself, because you're the only you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.